Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Josh Thomas from VAIQ.net to the podcast, and he's also the host of the Do Zone podcast. Welcome to the pod, Josh.
Hey, glad to have you. Glad to have you here. Glad to have me here. I'm so used to saying glad to have you.
I know, and that makes
Weird.
sense
It's weird being a
considering
guest.
you just had me on your podcast. We're doing a little bit of a pod swap here. I guested on your podcast, and we were talking about all things e-com, entrepreneurship, what makes entrepreneurship wonderful, what the challenges are, and we covered a lot of ground on that podcast. But now it's my chance to talk to you about lots of different things to do with, hey, look, it feels like you have crafted a life of freedom for yourself, first and foremost. And you helped to do that, or you originally did that. We talked about on your podcast that one of the ways you did that was to build up a resource pool of VAs that could help you become more efficient in what you were doing as an entrepreneur. You've also created this podcast, which also has seen some pretty incredible success. And of course, that requires you. But then behind the scenes, you don't do everything yourself to do with the podcast. You do the recording. You obviously are the host, and you're finding the right people to be on your podcast, to feature on your podcast. But what's super interesting, I feel like, is, and maybe where we start off here is, you took something, you eat your own dog food, you found some VAs, then you had other people that kind of wanted to do the same thing, and you said, hey, look, maybe there's a business in here somewhere. Maybe I can help other people do some of the similar things that I've already done and smooth the path for them, and maybe I can make some money while I'm at it.
There's a lot to be said about an entrepreneur trying to figure out how to start the next thing or whatever business it is that they want to do. And a lot of times we're trying to be cute and we're trying to reinvent the wheel and we're trying to do some like crazy new shiny whiz bang thing. And I spent many years doing that, failing and succeeding, mostly failing. And what I realized is I built up this certain set of skills in one thing that when you're really good at something, you take it for granted. That obviously everybody knows this, but nobody really knows it because you're the one that's put 10,000 hours worth of effort into it. And that's when I realized that I have built businesses and teams and operation systems, and I always bring in international virtual assistants to prop it up, and I stick them into, like, I built a proprietary like management system for it, and it was just like, that's just what I do. And then I realized that nobody else really does it that way. And okay, there might be something to this.
Wow. And that you ended up building an entire, your business it's not like you're a startup. You've been doing this for over a decade. And so that tells me that there's some legs to this thing. It's not as if you've been doing this for 6 months and you're still figuring out whether this is a thing, whether this is an important thing to have. I guess, let's go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Over the last 2
Oh, I
years,
like tangents.
AI has put the fear of God into almost everyone. And I feel like it's probably put the fear of God into VAs more than maybe just about anybody else, because they feel like, geez, are we going to be replaced by the machines now? Like all the operational stuff that we do every day, are we just going to be replaced with AI? So first of all, do you get some of your customers saying, hey, what can we do with AI that we're currently doing with virtual assistants? And I don't know, maybe that's another business line of yours to help businesses decide, okay, here's where I can use a VA and where I should use a VA, and here's where I could use AI, and here's where I probably should use AI, and never the twain shall meet, so to speak. But is that a concern in your industry, and is that a concern in your own business? And I'm guessing that you're already trying to figure out how to use AI in your own company to make you more efficient as well.
So definitely the latter. And here's the thing. Actually, the only people that are talking about replacing humans with AI are people who haven't tried it yet. And that's really the best answer that I can give, because I'll give you two big flagpoles to plant in the ground here. Klarna, IBM, and several other large, very well-known companies are infamous because they canned thousands of people in favor of AI and then immediately regretted it and hired all those people back. The reason why is because AI does not perform anywhere near as well as the marketers and salespeople say it does. So that's flagpole number one. It's not actually that. It's good, but it's not good enough to replace a person in most situations. Flagpole number two, if you have a business that interacts with other humans, they don't like interacting with your AI. They just don't like it. They would rather talk to a human 10 times out of 10. And so keeping those things in mind, and headlines, there was studies done, 80% of consumers would choose a company that has a human support or a human to talk to, even if it costs more or took longer. And that's huge. So it's like people don't want to deal with your AI. And so if you're trying to replace a human or an experience between humans with AI, it's a recipe for disaster. Like literally, unless it is the most lucrative, profitable, and consequential thing that you can do is interact with your customers and clients. Why would you hand that over to a machine that thinks like a toddler? I don't think you should do that unless you absolutely have no choice. And so I'm not really worried about AI because once you get into it, you'll realize this is not a human replacement. Now, what it is, it's an augmentation. My entire team right now, I was yesterday years old when I realized because we use Google Workspace, my entire team has access to Gemini 3 Pro. I had no idea. And then, all right. And then the first thing that I did, as soon as I found that out, I'm like, okay, here's your assignment for today. Go into your Gemini 3, do literally any task and send me a Loom, show me what you did. And let's get that involved a lot more. Because we were using ChatGPT and all that stuff, and it's great, but Gemini is taking over.
Yes.
And what it's really doing is I'm not gonna replace or get rid of any of my team members. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make them 10 times more effective.
Yeah, and to your point, there's two anecdotes that I want to share that align with what you just said. One is 2 years ago when ChatGPT and some of the other answer engines started to really go mainstream, I started playing around with them from the earliest days because I was like, man, this feels like mobile all over again. It feels like some transformative technologies that I've seen, including the internet itself, because I'm old enough to remember the pre-internet days. And I remember what it was like when the internet was all shiny and new. And I was like, man, this AI thing feels a lot like those early days of both those two technologies. And so I can't afford to let this pass me by. So I started playing with it early on. And I really thought at that stage, I was like, wow, okay, cool. This definitely can help me. But at what stage does it replace consultants? At what stage does it replace really good SIs? At what stage does it replace a lot of people in my industry? But funnily enough, the longer I used it and the longer I played with it, and when I redirected all my Omnibox queries using a plugin in Brave to ChatGPT, so I stopped using Google search cold turkey and switched to ChatGPT over a year ago now. And the more I used it, the less concerned I became about my job, my future, my livelihood, and all those around me. And the main reason is because although ChatGPT has access to a lot of hard data, a lot of science, a lot of technology, it doesn't have my lived experience over being in this industry for 25 years. So when I go in and I'm consulting to a client, it's not just cold, hard, repeatable stuff. It's how can I adapt the experiences that I've had with other clients, other businesses, other business models? How can I adapt that to create parallels to what some of my clients are going through and saying, look, I've worked with clients that have been in a similar situation to you, and this is how they dealt with it, and this is how they won. It's being able to connect dots in ways that ChatGPT doesn't have access to my memory bank. And that's the real differentiator here is 25 years worth of experience encapsulated in my brain that ChatGPT will never have access to. And that to me is a massive differentiator. The second thing is I just recently bought a new car here in Mexico. It was a used car, but I bought it from a dealer. And because of the super, super strict anti-money laundering laws here, I got to the dealership at about 4 p.m. They closed at 6 p.m. I was trying to make the payment via my online banking app from my bank account to their bank account. But because it was such a large amount for a car, obviously, the bank blocked it. In the app, the bank blocked it for anti-fraud measures. They gave me a quote unquote out, which was to ring their customer service number. So I clicked the button inside the app. It opened up the dialing function in my phone, and then it rang through to them. But it was an automated phone service that got us, me and the dealer, caught in a loop that we couldn't get out of. We actually couldn't get the issue resolved. We actually had to. So I ended up having to stay in town overnight unexpectedly because I couldn't complete the transaction on the day and drive the car home. I had to stay because this is 2 hours away where this dealer was. I quickly had my wife jump online and get me an Airbnb so that I could stay the night, so that I could physically go to the bank in the morning, get my account unlocked, get the amount approved, and then get the money transferred. And we were at the bank for an hour and a half all up, going through the whole process of waiting in line, speaking to a banking manager, all that sort of stuff. And of course, it was in Spanish and all that sort of stuff. So it's of course, that's all AI driven. All the stuff with the bank around anti-fraud is all based on scenario and pattern matching with your historical transactions. And obviously, I don't do transactions that large every single day, so it detected it as a potential fraudulent transaction. Did it to protect me ostensibly, but also to protect them. But then the opportunity that they gave me to get out of this, which was to speak to a human being, really didn't work the way that it was.
Didn't work either.
It didn't work either. So I said that's a long-winded way of saying, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, this may change, but for the foreseeable future, I just can't see a world where AI operating completely on its own, and Deloitte has got itself in hot water. 2 instances, Canadian government, Australian government, just in the last 2 months, where they got caught out using fictional AI data in reports that they charged millions of dollars for to the Canadian government and the Australian government, because the people using the data from AI never bothered to check the source material to see if it was actually legit. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think the human in the loop piece is going to be there for many years to come. But agreed, I treat AI today as a really good junior analyst. And if I keep that in mind when I'm using AI, I don't get really that disappointed. I'm like, it's a really good junior analyst. It's a really good junior something. But if I think of it as a junior analyst, I know I'm going to have to keep looking over its shoulder to make sure it's not doing something weird. And my concern is, and I'd love your take on this, my concern is I can start questioning the answers because of my domain expertise in most instances. Oh, this doesn't sound quite right. Let me dig into this a little bit more. But if you're brand new, if you're young still, and you're starting to use AI today, just like we did years ago, start using Google search, if all the kids of today are starting to use that and they're taking it as gospel, where does that leave us as humanity?
There's no answer to that right now, but one way that I've seen it explained that makes a lot of sense is AI is basically ChatGPT or whatever. It's like a blender, and all of the information that there is in the world, they stick it into this blender, and when you pour it into your cup and you drink it, and what does it taste like? Tastes like shit, because it's literally all the things and everything that there ever could possibly be. And it really depends on a human to say, if you're going to make a green smoothie, maybe you should use like kale and apples and a little bit of protein powder. And then we blend just that up. And that's where your domain expertise comes in, and the curation to say, okay, this doesn't taste good, doesn't look good, nobody's going to eat that. Let's use what I know to narrow this down, because we don't want raw meat in our smoothies. We want fruits and vegetables and powders and those sorts of things. And that's what we need, right? And that's where you still are always going to need that human coming in. Now, if you can teach the human how to use the blender, then that makes them that much more effective. There's a study by MIT that shows if you train your staff, and it doesn't matter, they could be domestic, international, they could be remote, virtual, in person. If you train your staff properly on how to use AI, their production has been proven to boost as much as 40%. And so whatever you get out of your employee or your VA, If you train them up on AI and how to use it properly, you're going to get 40% more. So if you think about that in terms of revenue, if your AI is or if your VA is producing $1,000 in revenue a day for you, then they would be producing $1,400 a day. And that adds up really quick.
That holds because if I think about even in my own life with my podcast, so pre AI tooling, so like I use Descript for the first cut of editing on my podcast. And so I have gotten down the editing of a podcast episode, including the time in Canva to create a custom thumbnail, to around 15 to 30 minutes max for each episode, because I put out 3 full 1-hour episodes a week. So I need to be able to get my editing down fast, right? So
Yeah.
Descript has auto filler word removal, auto word gap removal, auto and audio enhancement, all based on AI. And like I remember pre-Descript, I was spending an average of 2 hours per episode. So every 1 hour of recording took me 2 hours of editing, right? So now I've got that 1 hour of recording down to roughly 15 to 20, 25 minutes of editing per episode. So think of the efficient, like from 2 hours down to 15 minutes. That's pretty wild. Yeah, sure, I could have paid specialist to an audio engineer, whatever, to do all that editing for me or whatever, and paid a small fortune for that. But where AI has become really good is situations like this, where it can be systematized and it doesn't require like domain expertise. Like here's some hard and fast rules. Here's some language we want to remove from a podcast. Here's some gaps, some where there's no sound. We want to remove that. Okay, cool. And we want to do this audio enhancement by following this formula or this recipe to improve audio that's repeatable over and over again. It doesn't require domain expertise to be able to do that. That is where I think AI is just standout. Like this repetitive stuff that doesn't require any human creativity to be able to produce the recording, our conversation, our stream of consciousness conversation is the creative input. It is the uniquely human piece. It's not the editing after the fact that's uniquely human. So I feel like those tools are only going to get better. And I'm guessing that a lot of the tooling that you have trained your VAs to use is similar, meaning that it's not replacing human creativity. It's replacing the areas where there's a lot of repetitive grunt work involved.
For the most part, yes. And a good example would be the AI tools and everything that you do to edit your podcast. And you've been able to get that down to 15 minutes. You can also get it down to 0 minutes if you just get somebody else to run the AI. Yes. And then you don't even have to do anything.
Yes.
It's the best way to do it. And I think this is a good opportunity one of the very first things you said at the beginning of this show, I wanted to comment on it, but you had so many different good things to talk about, is you talked about creating this life of freedom. And something came to my mind there when you were saying that. And I think this is essential because we have been conditioned through years of exposure to ads on people with lifestyle businesses and that sort of thing, that the concept of freedom is you've got this chateau in France, you've got your Lamborghini, it's looking over the ocean side, and it's like, oh, I'm free. But here's real freedom. The real freedom is you and me can sit here and have this conversation right now, talking about whatever we want. And in the meantime, I have people that are picking up the phone and calling and inviting to my next networking event. I have people who are handling a customer service issue that just came in before we got on this show. I have people who are setting appointments for the next thing for the VA placement service that we have. They're setting those appointments and confirming them. And I have the freedom to spend my time doing something else like this because that's what I want to do. Freedom really has everything to do with the ability to do what you want and none of the stuff that you don't want. But that stuff still gets done. And as long as you're thinking about that, when you can delegate or automate or even delete things off of your plate, that is when you're creating real freedom.
And I guess to your point, we all have our own zones of genius, right? We all have our areas where we're just the best at that thing, or at least best at that stack of things, right? That unique combination of things that we're just stand out in that no one has that same exact life experience that we have that makes us awesome at that thing. And so if we can, and it's interesting that you put it exactly that way, because because I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozy. I think he's really smart. And he said, look, if I can get paid, and I've heard this similar story from multiple people, but he had a way of contextualizing it in a way that really hit home with me. He's okay. So let's say you make an average of $200 an hour, whatever it is, $100 an hour, whatever it is. And the thing that you spend your time doing during the day, let's say it's cleaning your house, or let's say it's washing your car, or let's say it's you take time out of your day or your weekend or whatever it is to do these domestic tasks, whatever it might be, going to the supermarket, doing supermarket shopping, whatever it might be, preparing dinner, whatever it is. And basically, if you can pay anyone less than $200, let's say your average rate of pay is $200 an hour, if you can pay anybody less than $200 an hour to do those things, then that is a net positive for you, because you can do more of the things for more hours, the same time that you would spend going and doing your grocery shopping. Instead, no, take on more clients at $200 an hour and pay that person. Even if you're paying them $180 an hour, it's still a net positive for you. And so
You,
that's
you
crazy.
are you are the highest paid virtual assistant in the world, basically. Unless you are delegating certain responsibilities, you're paying yourself that. And here's a quick exercise. I have a little calculator that'll do this. You can go to vaiq.net/calculator. But the formula is fairly simple. If you pay yourself $10,000 a month, and you say, let's assume you work a 40-hour work week, give or take, then your hourly rate is $60. And if you pay yourself $20,000 a month, your hourly rate is $120. Now, would you pay somebody $100+ an hour to check your email, to set appointments, to call some line and see if you can get in a lunch reservation or something? Would you pay somebody that much money to do those things? Most people would not, but you're paying yourself that much if that's your rate. And so if you can get somebody else to do that for $10 an hour, then that frees you up for more $100, $200, $1,000 an hour stuff, because you're not wasting your time doing these other things. Because if you're doing it yourself, guess who's paying for that? You're paying for it.
Yes.
It's just you don't notice because the money's not going out of your bank account.
Yes.
It's just sitting there, and then it's losing value.
But it's going out of your time bank account. And I think
That's
that's
right.
the thing that most people don't think about. You got two different types of bank accounts. You got a hard dollars and cents bank account, but you also got a time bank account. And that time bank account, and I notice it more now, to be honest, now that I'm 51, I notice the ticking down of the time bank account more than I notice the ticking down of the cash bank account. And that's just a function of age, I think, and experience. And I'll work until I die, or I'll work as long as they'll let me work, basically. As long as I can have clients, I will continue to work, because I love it. I love what I do. But to your point, I think if more people can focus on doing what they love to do, then I think they're probably, because you're always more productive at something you enjoy, right? If when you sit down at your computer, you got to do something that you see as drudgery. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's preparing your taxes at the end of the year or whatever it might be. Think of the thing that you just hate the most about sitting down in front of your computer and doing, but you have to do it, versus something where you sit down and you go, man, I can't wait to get stuck into this. And think of the delta between the speed and the pace and the energy with which you do those two things. That is the delta between something that you would do that isn't in your zone of genius, something that is something in your business, for example, that a VA could potentially do. And are you seeing that VAs are able to do an increasing scope of work over time, given somebody willing to train them?
There's a big gap that happens, whether if you're hiring directly or if you're going with some agency, for instance. A lot of times what's going to happen is you're basically going to end up with a warm body and a high five and a good luck. And what happens from there is largely up to you. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're busy running your business, you probably don't have either the skills or the desire or the time to become a manager or an HR department. or to make sure that you're staying on top of people's tasks. And people need that structure, especially remote teams. Remote teams, whether they're domestic or international, you need daily accountability and structure, or there's this operational drift and everything just goes to crap. And as long as you have that structure, then the sky's the limit on what any employee can do, regardless of where they live. If you don't have that structure in place, what usually happens is you get busy, you get distracted. Oh, sorry, I don't have time for this. They start feeling bad about asking questions, and then they fade away. And it fails. And then you're like, oh yeah, I tried to hire a VA and it just didn't work. I couldn't get him to do anything. But what really happened is they just weren't put in the right environment to thrive. If you take the world's record holding marathon runner and stick him into a 9x9 room and just feed him fried chicken for 6 months, he's probably not going to win the next marathon. He might,
Likely.
but he's definitely going to beat me, but he's probably not going to win. He's not going to get his best time because he wasn't put in the right environment to succeed. Even though he was the best person for the job, he was not put in the right environment. Vice versa, if you take a guy with no legs and you put him through the best training regimen ever, he ain't winning either. And so you really got to focus on, we got to get the right people, yes, but we have to put them in the right environment to succeed. And that's where a lot of things fall. So, hey, can a VA do your books? Yeah. Can a VA be a paralegal, engineer, accountant? All of these things. They can do literally anything, and they may already have college degrees and years of experience in that. But if they're not put in the right environment to succeed, they're going to fail no matter what. That's why we closed the gap. I'm like, I'm not even going to take the chance. If you're going to work with me, you run your business however you want. You're the boss. You call the shots. But if I'm delivering talent, I'm meeting with them every day. I'm making sure they have their questions answered, and I'm going to have them fill out an EOD report, and I'm going to deliver that to you and say, here's what we did today, boss. And that way, if it fails, it ain't on me, man. Like, my person showed up, and I made sure they were managed. I made sure that they were doing everything they needed to do. And that takes the burden off of you trying to have to figure out how to run a team when all you want to do is be a badass plumber or an HVAC repair guy or whatever it is that you're good at. Just keep doing that. Like, we'll take care of the logistics.
Now let's flip the script a little bit and let's take the focus off of remote teams and let's put the focus on the business owner. What are the 1, 2, 3 characteristics of an owner, a founder, a leader, someone who's maybe a manager? What are the characteristics in that human, or what kind of characteristics do they need to develop to be able to make them a good candidate for having a remote team member or a VA team member, to be able to perform well, to be able to get great value out of them, to make them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, to make them feel like they're getting value out of the role themselves, to set that remote team member up for success? What are the things in the clients of yours where this is working super well? Are there any commonalities between the people that are able to make this work? Is it their personality? Is it their management style? Is it their experience level? Is it their age? What are the things that usually help to make a leader a really good fit for working with a VA team?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, I can define 2 types of avatars for an entrepreneur or a business owner. And let's call them overwhelmed Owen and capacity Carl, right? Now, they actually have the same problem, but because of all of their previous experience and the way that they look at things, they see it differently. Overwhelmed Owen is going in 12 different directions. He's got too much on his plate. He can't concentrate. He can't sit down and focus. He can't get anything done because he just needs to claw back time off of his schedule because he's just overworked. Capacity Carl is at a point in his business where he needs to expand his production, where he needs to get more output, and he needs more capacity so that he can produce more income and more results. Now, if you read between the lines, they have the same problem. It's just a matter of how they're looking at the problem and how their brain works. And so the solution to the problem is, first and foremost, you need more hands, right? You need better systems and you need more firepower. 9 times out of 10, if you clean up your systems and you add a little bit of juice, you're going to get exponential results, whether you're overwhelmed or you're at capacity. And as far as who these people are, I wouldn't put any kind of specific demographic because I have both of those guys. Like I recently placed both of those guys. And one of them is just, whoa, this needs a lot of work. And the other one is, let's get to work. But they have the same problem, right? The thing that I look for in a international talent specifically is what I call the unteachable traits. They're proactive, they're responsible, they're organized, and as a bonus, they're actually pleasant to be around and work with. I would transfer those unteachable traits over to the business owner as well. If you're going to be successful in general, then you need to be proactive, responsible, organized, and it's a bonus if you're actually pleasant to work with. And so we need those things on both sides of the equation in order to be successful, whether you're talking about a VA or an in-house employee or a conversation with your client. Both sides really need to be on the same page there. That's really the recipe for success. And if one side is missing those traits, that's where most of the friction and problems come from.
Core requirement: don't be an asshole. Like it seems fundamental, right?
Yeah. Don't be an asshole and don't be like irresponsible.
Yeah, don't be a prick. Okay, I love it. I love it. I'll jot that down. I'll take that down. Where do you?
Don't be a loser, man.
Yeah. Just don't be a loser. Just be a good human. Do you find that there are specific regions of the world, specific cultures of the world that lend themselves to being a VA and having a really good working relationship with busy entrepreneurs? Is it the Philippines? Is it Ukraine? Is it China? Is it Vietnam? Where are you finding? Is it South Africa? I had a woman who was placing some VA talent on the podcast a few months ago, and she just recently, through meeting somebody in South Africa, she ended up finding that. So she originally placed a lot of people from the Philippines, but what she found was in the more contentious environment where Asians are eager to please and eager to grease the wheels and make sure things flow really smoothly and eager to make sure that there's as little friction as possible in the conversation. For example, she found that in customer service roles where you maybe are operating in a more aggressive country like the United States, for example, where people are maybe a little bit more forceful, a little bit more aggressive on the phone with customer service, maybe have a little bit higher expectations, and where Asians might feel quite offended by that personality type and expectation level. She found that South Africans, because they just naturally have a thicker skin culturally speaking, they can take the banter, they can take without being offended, they can take that level of expectation in a customer service role, for example, than their Asian counterparts could. So are you finding that from a cultural fitment perspective that there are certain regions and certain types of personalities that are just, they lend themselves to certain tasks better than others?
So here's what I'll say. There's great talent in all over the world, in every country in the world. And there are certainly what you're calling out is there's some cultural barriers and there's some cultural misalignment. And it's important to be aware of that. The vast majority of virtual assistant placement agencies will source from the Philippines. And the reason for that is because you can get really good quality English speaking people for very little money. But you're going to get what you pay for. And I'm not like, here's the thing, I've got like an it's complicated relationship with the Philippines
Yes.
because I actually have 3 Filipinos on my team and they're great. But I would not recruit from, they're like legacy, they've been with me for years and it's awesome, but I typically am going to recruit from Central America right now. Not that there's not great people in the Philippines or Ukraine or South Africa or whatever. It's just that for Americans, the time zone alignment, the alignment with Western business culture, and along with what you were saying, their tradition of just working is unbeatable. And then on top of that, another advantage is in Central America specifically, there are a ton of call centers for bilingual customer service. So some US corporation has already dropped tens of thousands of dollars training these guys up making sure that they are 100% fluent in English, that they are comfortable and familiar with Western culture, and they're just sitting there looking for work where they don't have to grind it out 12 hours a day in a call center, and you can offer them a better opportunity. And so it's like they're just sitting there already trained up, already ready to go. And maybe they cost a little more than the Philippines, but you have so many advantages there. Now, I'm literally trying to place somebody from Indonesia right now. And she's one of the best that I've ever had. And so I'm blind to where they're from as long as they're great talent. But I'm not like specifically recruiting in Indonesia. She just showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, is there one that's better than the other? I don't think so. I think great people are great people. And I think everybody has their preferences. But the things that you pointed out about the appeasement culture, that is something to be aware of because it will drastically affect your production and your output.
Yeah, it's interesting because even so in IT and in e-commerce, obviously there's a lot of Indian development houses, right? And there's a lot of Indian both outsourcing and offshoring companies that operate in India. And I've been working with Indian talent for 25 years. Basically, since I entered this industry, I've been working and been exposed to and had Indian team members either on the client side or on the agency side since I entered the industry. And culturally, what you have to be aware of with Indians, and I have a lot of Indian clients too, but what you have to be aware of is that because it's an Asian culture, they will try to say yes, even if they only think that they can do something, say, for example, within a certain time frame or whatever. They will make the most positive case for assumption that they possibly can, even if they absolutely cannot hit that timeline. Say, okay, cool. Can you get this back to me by Thursday? And it's a Monday. Their default answer is always going to be yes. And so you have
Yeah, because they want you to keep.
yes, and they don't want to harm the relationship. They don't want to. They don't want to be seen as someone who's obtuse. They don't want to be seen as someone who's contrary. They don't want to be seen as someone who is going to upset the boat. They don't want to be seen as someone who's going to hurt the team. They want to be seen as someone who's a team player and who's always ready to step up to the plate and give it a red hot crack. I learned very early on that with and it does depend a little bit on the specific individual in question. If they say they can have it to you by Thursday, you're probably better off to give it 2 or 3 days worth of additional buffer just in case, because the reality is that they're going to tell you yes 95% of the time, regardless of whether the answer should have been a no or not. And I think you do have to be culturally sensitive. I think you do have to be culturally aware of the type of environment someone has grown up in and what their cultural expectation has been placed upon them and why they would respond in a certain way. Because I think if you're not culturally aware, my wife's Asian, so she's half Chinese, half Vietnamese, so I understand the Asian culture quite well. But I think especially when you're hiring a VA, and whether they go through someone like you as an intermediary or not, if you are not culturally sensitive, you're potentially setting yourself and the VA up for a pretty hard lesson in failure, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's the unspoken piece of this, which is the spoken piece that I can say is, hey, you're probably not like a real kick-ass human resources manager, and that's fine. You don't have to be, like, you shouldn't be. But the other thing that can happen is if you don't have a buffer in place, and not to say you're an insensitive person or culturally ignorant, but if you don't understand and you're not working with people that live in other countries on a regular basis, there's some comedy of errors that can happen that, again, all comes down to impacting your production and output. Like everything that we do is focused around maximizing the production that you get from another person at a minimal cost. And managing them every day is one piece of that. Understanding cultural differences is one piece of that. And that's where having that kind of like buffer in place to where it's okay, cool. If you can just assign these tasks, obviously build a relationship and rapport and all that stuff. But if you can assign these tasks, we'll make sure the tasks get done because we know how to talk to them. We know how to communicate to them because they're already surrounded by people that they already like. I recruit everybody from the same place. And so it's like my whole team knows the culture, and it makes it a lot easier for us to establish those standards and to give them the confidence and empowerment to say, actually, no, I don't know how to do that, but I will commit to having that problem solved in 3 days, and I'll report back to you with the answers and results. And now it's okay, cool. We can be honest, and then we've got an action plan in place to close that gap.
Do you think every single entrepreneur should have a VA?
I think anybody who is stuck where they are and wants to get to the next place, absolutely yes. I hired a VA long before I could afford one. I was working a job. I had a not very high salary, and I was trying to figure out how to get out of that. And I knew I was never going to do that by myself. And so I had to get that help to bring that person in there to take over these kind of lower level stuff so that I could focus on the higher level stuff. And I've had every single day of my career since then, I've had at least one virtual assistant that's been helping me. I've got 7 or 8 people on my team now. I forget at this point, but they all are working for me all day, every day. And maybe if I ever change directions and start to go and do this other thing, I'm always going to have at least one, because it is the cheat code for exponential productivity.
Wow. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. So I'm going to show you something on the screen. So this right here is a document. It's called a cita, which is an appointment in Spanish, which you probably know because you speak Spanish, I'm assuming, since you hire from Central America. And so I just bought this new car, and it's a fresh import, but it's been legally imported through customs. So there's a whole bunch of customs documentation that I need to take down to my local Puebla City vehicle department, and I need to get it registered in my name. I need to get plates issued for the vehicle, and I need to go through this tramite process for getting it legally transferred from as a legal import into a legally state registered vehicle. Now, it took me 30 minutes with a conversation with ChatGPT to make sure I had all the document list that was required, to go to the government website of Puebla to figure out which tramite I needed to follow, because there was like 50 vehicle-related tramites, a couple of screenshots from the screen, pasted into ChatGPT. Then I went back to the government website, found the right tramite, found the ability to actually book it online. Then I needed to find a local office, because there's 20 local offices here in Puebla City, that had availability in the calendar, because of course they're getting ready to shut down for Christmas, and I need this done before Christmas, because otherwise I can't drive my car legally. Anyway, I can't drive my car.
Yeah.
And they shut down as of this Friday. Most government offices will be shut down now through Christmas, and out of like the 20 local offices, only one that I found in the drop down actually had any appointment availability for tomorrow or Friday. Now, that took me like 30 minutes. I had to put in my details. I had put in the VIN number for the vehicle. And now I've got this cita for tomorrow where I can go in and I can wait in line and I can finish this process and pay the government fee to make this happen. Now, I'm guessing that a really good VA, if I told them what I was trying to achieve, hey, look, I need to book this car in. They could have asked the same questions of ChatGPT that I did. They could have gone to the same government website link that I went to. They could have taken some screenshots. They could have, if I just said, look, I need an appointment. I need you to make this an appointment. I need you to download the PDF of this, and I need you to send me over the PDF of this booking, because I have to physically take the booking form in with me. Otherwise, they won't let me in the door.
From New Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I totally,
it's the way that every government process is like this. Every single government process is like this.
Your papelito.
Los trámites.
It's like paperwork, basically. Yeah,
correct.
And that's the thing, is you can just say, I bought this car. Here's the government office. Please find one that's open and get me an appointment. And then you can go and edit your podcast or whatever. And somebody else can do that. And especially if you're recruiting somebody from Central America, they can literally pick up the phone and call because they speak the same language.
Yes.
And so those are the things where, there's no way I would do any of that. That sounds horrible. I would definitely delegate that. In fact, I got one of my clients works in construction, and he was developing an RV park in Oklahoma, and he's not from Oklahoma. And so he sent to his VA, look, we need somebody to come and lay gravel. Here's a list of questions that you need to ask. Go Google anybody that's in the area, call 10 of them, find one that's available today, ask them these questions, and send them my way. And the whole thing was done for him, right?
Wow.
Now, what he had to deliver was, I need this kind of person. Here's what you need to say to make sure that they're the right kind of person. And here's what to do when you find them. But you can get someone else to do everything else. And so they were able to solve that problem, and he never had to touch it because he had the right person in place and he gave them the right guidance, and then they were managed properly.
So he had to create the list of questions, but he didn't have to ask the list of questions of the 20 places
That's
that
right.
needed to be called.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Problem got solved with basically 5 minutes of his time.
Wow. Wow. Whereas it might have taken him 2 hours of time without having someone to be able to handle that as a human being for him.
Yeah. And that's something I do all the time. I've had just little, it all adds up, man. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yes.
or death by 1,000 logins.
Yes.
Because I've had my executive assistant find flights for me because I don't want to go and look for them. And I still have to buy them,
Yes.
but I don't have to go and, hey, I want a flight that leaves in the morning and comes back in this afternoon, and the cheapest one possible with the shortest flight. Can you go find it for me? Boom. She gave me 2 options, and I clicked the button and buy. Here's the link. Click here. And that saved me a half an hour.
Yeah.
Just little things like that you can just get off of your plate. And not only does it save you the time, but it saves you this context switching in your head, which creates a mental exhaustion from all of the decisions you have to make and all the different things that you have to get yourself into. If you can stay like mono-focused, you get so much more done that way. And that's another thing, that you can just push anything that's not like directly in front of you off to someone else so that you can stay in your lane.
Yeah, deep work and flow, I think, are 2 very important things, especially for entrepreneurs. Listen, man, this has been a much more interesting, I guess, and deeper conversation than what I necessarily expected to have. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, if you could snap your fingers and if you could change one thing, literally with some pixie dust, about the VA industry or people's understanding of it to make the whole industry better, what would it be?
I would say this: the gap between here's your VA and your VA is actually performing is humongous. But it doesn't have to be if you'll just install a bridge. And that bridge is going to be some form of daily oversight and accountability, and just basically checking in to let somebody know that they're there. And this is universal for any kind of remote team, even if they're based in the US or England or whatever. Any remote team, you've got to make up for the fact that you're not sitting in the office with them somehow. And that basic structure is going to make all the difference. And if I have 30 more seconds, I'll explain.
You go.
So we use a system called Pulse. And Pulse is, we literally keep our finger on the pulse of my company all day, every day. And the way that we do that is, I borrowed from the world's most elite athletes: Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Cristiano Ronaldo. These are all names that everybody knows, whether they're into sports or not. And if you ever ask them, how did you get so good? They all had the same answers. They all use the same ingredients. They have a process that they follow. They're constantly updating their metrics and abilities and measuring those. They had a leader, somebody that was coaching them and guiding them through the process. They were constantly honing their skills on a daily basis. And then finally, they put execution above everything else that they did. Process, updates, leadership, skills, execution, Pulse, right? And those guys are getting up at 4 a.m. and they're going through all those drills, and they have all that accountability every day so that they could dominate. How in the world are we going to expect ourselves or our teams to perform without any of that? It's the easiest thing you can do, and it's the only thing that those guys do. It's just that they do it more than anybody else. And so that's why you install Pulse in your business. You work that on a daily basis. Your productivity goes up immediately, even if you're not good at it. Just the fact that you have that routine and ritual and you're paying attention to those things, it's going to get better. That's the thing that's missing not just with VAs, but with any kind of remote team. Install Pulse, use it, and you will make more money.
I guess it all comes down to accountability at the end of the day. You could wrap all that up, and I guess there's probably two sides to that coin: empathy and accountability. You got to have both, and without either of those two, you're probably going to have some serious issues. No, it's super.
And if you're not empathetic, just outsource it to me.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Now, I will drop a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes and a link to your website, VAIQ, in the show notes. Other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you and talk all things entrepreneurial efficiency with or without a VA? You're a specialist in helping entrepreneurs become more efficient in their business and personal lives. What's the best way to get a hold of you and have chat about all those things?
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning more about installing a high-performing virtual assistant and a high-performing environment into your business that's managed for you, you can go to vaiq.net. You can reach me on LinkedIn, just we were talking about already. And then also, I'm pretty easy to reach on either of those. So I can give you like 1,000 more, but let's start there. If you want to talk to me, there's plenty of ways to get in touch there.
Absolutely. Just Google or ChatGPT you and you will pop up. I absolutely love it.
I will offer, I have a book that I wrote called Build Without Borders, and you should be able to access that on my website, vaiq.net. Build Without Borders. It is basically, this is my manifesto for how I hire and manage international talent. So go and grab that. If you don't want to talk to me yet, read the book at least.
I love it. I love it. Free resource should never be sniffed at. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth. People, go and check it out on the VAIQ website. And now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. So Mr. Josh Thomas from VAIQ.net, what is your question for me today?
Knowing that you're a guy that lives in Mexico, and I personally love Mexico, I want to talk about food. I want to talk about, in the time that you've been in Mexico, what is your favorite food that you have encountered there?
Yeah, man, that is always such a good question. It's always such a hard question because, unlike my wife, who only likes because my wife's Asian, so she obviously prefers Asian food typically to Mexican food. So she's got a much narrower palate when it comes to Mexican food than me, whereas I like almost all Mexican food. There's very little Mexican food I don't like. But I will break it down into sort of mains versus breakfast. Chilaquiles for breakfast is always my favorite. I absolutely love it. Love it with chilaquiles verde is good, but rojo is better for me personally. I like a red sauce. For dinners or like late afternoon meal, the heaviest meal of the day, man, it's such a tough one because I do love so much. But I do love an amazing street taco. Like, it sounds so basic, but there's street tacos and then there's street tacos. And I tell you, when you find a good one, I love lengua, I love res, I love cerdo. So yeah, when I find there's two types. I love pastor, tacos al pastor, but I also love from Jalisco tacos dorados, which is basically like Americans would probably think of it more like a taquito.
Fried,
and so they'll make it as a normal taco, and then they'll put it on a flat grill and they'll fry it up crisp. And that is very special.
Yeah.
Very special. Yeah. So yeah, I love Mexican food, man. But yeah, I love a good tacos dorados.
Yeah. Excellent.
Amazing.
Well, hey, that'll do it for this episode.
I love it, man. Listen,
handing the microphone back.
Yeah, super cool chatting with you. It's so much fun. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody should listen to this podcast if they want to become more efficient in their entrepreneurial endeavors. And I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much for your time. If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.